It was a crisp October morning in Boston, the kind where the air smells faintly of roasted coffee and fallen leaves. The city streets were alive with the familiar hum of early commuters, taxis honking, bicycles weaving through traffic, and the occasional distant siren. Inside a modest corner office on the 18th floor of a downtown marketing firm, Michael Trent, 38, sipped his lukewarm black coffee and stared at the blinking cursor on his laptop. Michael was the kind of man people described as reliable, diligent, and thoughtful. He'd spent nearly 15 years in the same company, gradually climbing the ranks from junior analyst to senior account manager. To colleagues, he was dependable but unremarkable, a steady presence who never drew attention but quietly delivered results. In meetings, he listened more than he spoke, rarely taking risks, preferring logic over flair. At home, he was equally meticulous. A neat apartment in Cambridge, weekend visits to the farmer's market, and a small circle of friends who appreciated his dry sense of humor. But today, Michael felt the familiar tightness in his chest, the unease that came when ambition collided with reality. This week, the company was promoting 2 account managers to director level. He had expected to be one of them. He deserved to be. Yet last night, an email from HR confirmed the promotions went to Carla Nguyen and Darren Cole, 2 colleagues who, for better or worse, had always been a bit flashier than him. Michael closed his laptop, staring at his reflection in the dark screen. He looked tired, older than his age, and for the first time in a long while, he questioned whether all the years of quiet diligence had been worth it. He wondered if loyalty and consistency were enough to get noticed, or if, in today's world, visibility and self-promotion mattered far more than competence. The morning unfolded like a slow, persistent drip of reality. Carla stopped by his office with a congratulatory smile, cheerful but oblivious to the storm inside him. Darren waved from across the floor, already rehearsing his acceptance speech for the company-wide email announcement. Meanwhile, Michael felt invisible, a ghost in his own office. By lunchtime, he wandered out into the streets, seeking a break from the hum of fluorescent lights and cubicle chatter. He found himself at Boston Common, watching a group of children jump into piles of fallen leaves, their laughter ringing sharp and clear in the autumn air. For a brief moment, he envied their joy, their unfiltered enthusiasm. As he walked, Michael's mind wandered to his personal life. He'd been single for a while now, though not by choice. Friends would ask, half-jokingly, "When are you going to settle down?" And he would shrug. Relationships had always felt like projects, requiring effort, strategy, compromise. And lately, he had less patience for anything that didn't feel genuine. Just like at work, he wondered if he was waiting for something that would never come. That evening, Michael attended the company's informal celebration for the promoted employees. He nursed a drink in the corner, exchanging polite nods while Carla and Darren basked in attention. His supervisor, Leonard, stopped by and offered a few encouraging words. "Michael, your work is solid. We notice it. Keep at it. You'll get there." The phrase should have felt reassuring. Instead, it felt like a consolation prize, a polite way of saying, "Not yet, maybe never." On his walk home, Michael's frustration started to give way to reflection. He remembered a lesson his father had once told him during one of their rare, long conversations. Success isn't just about recognition. It's about whether you respect the work you do and the person you become along the way. He thought about the clients who genuinely appreciated his efforts, the small victories he'd quietly achieved, and the integrity he'd maintained even when it would have been easier to cut corners. He realized that in his chase for a promotion, he'd overlooked the satisfaction that came from doing the work well, the pride in knowing he could handle challenges with competence and calm. That weekend, Michael decided to take a step back and reconnect with life outside the office. He joined a local volunteer group that helped run literacy programs for underprivileged children. It was exhausting, chaotic work, but for the first time in months, he felt fully alive. He discovered a joy in small acts of service, in mentoring kids, in seeing tangible results that didn't come with spreadsheets or quarterly reports. Months passed. Michael didn't receive the promotion that year, and in truth, he didn't pursue it with the same intensity. Instead, he honed his skills, deepened his relationships, and started taking on projects that mattered to him rather than projects that merely looked impressive. Slowly, he noticed a shift, not in others' recognition, but in his own mindset. Work became less about climbing and more about creating impact, less about competing and more about contributing. Then, unexpectedly, an opportunity appeared. A smaller firm specializing in community-focused marketing was looking for a director who could manage clients while embracing ethical, long-term strategies. Michael applied, expecting nothing, and within weeks he was offered the position. It wasn't the promotion he'd originally chased at his old company. It wasn't flashy or high profile, but it aligned perfectly with his values. For the first time, he felt he was stepping into a role that honored who he had become, not who he thought he should be. Years later, Michael would tell the story differently. Not about missing a promotion or feeling overlooked. Not about envy or frustration. Instead, he'd speak about patience, perspective, and the quiet power of integrity. He learned that life isn't about immediate validation or public recognition. It's about the choices you make consistently, the work you do even when no one is watching, and the fulfillment that comes from living according to your principles. Sitting in his new office on a brisk fall morning, he watched the leaves swirl outside the window, and he smiled. Success, he realized, wasn't a title or a pay grade. It was a life lived with purpose and authenticity, and finally, he had it. And as a small reminder, Michael often ended his story the same way he ended his days, content, reflective, and grateful. He leaned back in his chair, took a deep breath, and said to anyone listening, maybe even to himself, "Do the work that matters. Trust the journey. And don't forget to appreciate the little victories along the way." If you enjoyed Michael's journey and want to hear more stories like this, click subscribe to get new videos and don't miss our next story.